Yeah, thanks for having me. And for anybody, your viewers, just we need to try to keep the chatter and the conspiracy theories to a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we do need to find out what happened to Nolan from 3 o'clock until he was last seen. His family has a right to know exactly what happened and how he met his final moments. But there's his friends, who he's been friends with since he was a little kid, are getting death threats from people who are
Hmm.
accusing him of horrible things. And
Yeah.
right now, we don't know anything. We have to let
Right.
law enforcement do their job and come out with the facts. And that's what we're asking the public to do.
One need to try to keep the conspiracy theories to a minimum. That was Brian Trasher, Vice President of the United Cajun Navy, speaking on July 7th after his team recovered the body of 18-year-old Nolan Wells, a plea issued not to armchair investigators or the media, but to a digital mob that had already convicted the dead teenager's closest friends in the court of public opinion. Think of a small town where a tragedy occurs, and instead of bringing casseroles, the neighbors show up with digital pitchforks. That is exactly what happened on Horn Island, and it transformed a drowning investigation into a secondary crime scene, where the victims are still breathing but still receiving death threats.
And the conspiracy theories to a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we do need to find out what happened to Nolan from 3 o'clock until he was last seen. His family has a right to know exactly what happened and how he met his final moments. But there's his friends, who he's been friends with since he was a little kid, are getting death threats from people who are
Hmm.
accusing him of horrible things. And
Yeah.
right now, we don't know anything.
18-year-old Nolan Wells went to Horn Island with several friends on Saturday. This young, fit wide receiver for the Southwest Mississippi Community College football team was last seen at around 3 p.m. that day. New York Post reported that he was, quote, talking to a girl on the north end of Horn Island.
At approximately 3 p.m., his friends decided to leave the island. Nolan chose to stay behind, talking to a young woman, telling his group he would find another ride back.
So the story which was told to me was that at approximately 3 p.m., his friend group that he had gone to the island with decided they were going to leave. They had to get back, and Nolan had started talking to. I was told it was a young female,
Yeah.
but he was talking to some other people. Had decided that, hey, I'm going to hang back. I can get a ride back with somebody else. He hangs out with this group all the time. They've been to this island together a bunch of times. It probably at the time didn't seem like a big deal to his friends to say, okay, you want to, go holler at that girl, and maybe if she'll give you a ride back, then that's cool. We'll see you when we get home. That's the way it was explained to me. Later on, when it got to be after dark and nobody had heard from him, but they also somehow or another, his phone ended up staying on the boat that his friends were on, so they had his phone, so they brought it back to his mother. So he had no way of communicating unless he borrowed somebody's phone. But nevertheless, the sequence of events that transpired after approximately 3 p.m. to when he went into the water, that's what.
That was the last confirmed sighting before he vanished. His phone remained on the boat his friends took home. They delivered it to his mother. When Nolan didn't return and couldn't be reached, a multi-agency search began involving
Specialist and a drone operator go out on a boat, and they spent several hours out there on the island and around the island, and they were not successful in finding any clues. So that's when we decided to do aerial reconnaissance. So yesterday morning at first light, I went up in a single engine fixed wing aircraft and flew basically a grid around Horn Island, Ship Island, which are barrier islands just south of Biloxi and Pascagoula, Mississippi, down to Chandelier Islands, which is actually part of Louisiana, but just due south of those barrier islands, and looking for any kind of activity. And then, as we flew over the northwest tip of Horn Island, going back north, we noticed there was a couple of boats beached up on the beach that were not there before, and I could look down and I could see that something was going on. And then we made a circle around. By that time, a lot more law enforcement boats were showing up, and before you know it, they had probably a dozen boats huddled up on the beach there. So we knew that they were setting up a command center.
What was this search effort like? I mean, I know that there was multiple people involved in it. What was it like from the start of it, and how quickly did you mobilize to provide support?
The Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Mississippi Marine Patrol, National Park Service Rangers, and the Volunteer Cajun Navy. At AC 45 a.m. on July 6th, a park ranger on routine patrol spotted a body in the water near the northwest tip of the island.
And they have park rangers who do a great job keeping a lot of recreational boaters and swimmers and stuff safe. And it was one of those rangers that actually ended up discovering Nolan's remains yesterday morning about 8:45 Central.
I want to talk about that in a minute because I have
Yep.
some questions about the potential remains here.
Yeah.
First of all, what resources do the United Cajun Navy provide that traditional law enforcement or other agencies just don't have? I mean, what role do you play? I mean, it's interesting. We've talked about it, about how they maybe should be allowed to assist in the Nancy Guthrie investigation.
The coroner awaits DNA confirmation, but officials stated they have no reason to believe it is not Nolan Wells.
The sheriff's office put out a statement saying that they had no reason to believe it was not Nolan. So I think they were pretty confident it was. I think the reason for the delay in the official announcement is that I don't think the coroner can sign the death certificate until he gets DNA evidence proving it is who they're, the person they're saying is deceased, is actually them. So I think it's just a formality, to be honest with you. But I believe that the family or somebody in the family did identify Nolan, and because they put out their own statement acknowledging that it was his remains that were found and that he had in fact died.
Just to clarify something, why wasn't the body spotted earlier?
I think that I can tell you that I've started flying over the island, that part of the island where the body washed up.
The family has already acknowledged it is him. A young man with his whole life ahead of him is dead. What happened between 3 p.m. and the moment Nolan entered the water remains an unanswered question. The official investigation has indicated no evidence of foul play, but that vacuum of certainty was filled instantly by what Brian Trasher called the Facebook detectives. They seized on the fact that Nolan stayed behind to talk to a girl. They seized on his phone being left on the boat. They seized on the silence of teenage friends who were likely terrified and lawyered up on parental advice. And from these fragments, a narrative was manufactured. Not a tragic accident involving a powerful rip current and possible dehydration in extreme heat.
I think that the only thing about the weather that's of note is that it was extremely hot and UV index was really high. So if those guys weren't drinking a lot of water, it could have been dehydrated, just, possible sunstroke. It could have just sort of, the sun can drain energy out of you. So even though, like I said, he was young and athletic, by the time he got into the water, he might have been in a weakened state and didn't even know it.
Can you just talk to us a little bit more about Horn Island, what we should
Yeah.
know about it? Because I understand it's not very big. There aren't any
Right.
buildings or anything like that, but
Which Trasher identified as the most probable cause.
Yeah, I think that he either tried to swim out for some reason, either to try to get on a boat or to go, catch up with somebody or whatnot. And there was a pretty strong rip coming off that part of the island that day. And even though he's a really athletic kid, it was a strong rip. It would have been hard for anybody to maintain control, and he might have gotten carried out, and he may have drowned that way. Or, and again, I hate to even suggest anything that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I'm just saying it's a possibility that he got on another boat and maybe MOB'd and drowned that way and then washed back up. He did not. My opinion is that when he went into the water, however he got into the water, he didn't go that far out before he drowned because it only took like a couple of days for him to drift right back south to the tip of the island, same tip of the island where he was last seen. Had he gone a lot further out, he probably would have gotten sucked into the ship channel and pushed way further south toward the Chandelier Islands.
And to be clear, I mean, nobody has indicated foul play, right? I mean,
but a premeditated betrayal. That gap between what law enforcement has stated and what the internet has concluded is where the real damage is being done. The death threats are not a footnote to this story. They are the story's second act. Childhood friends, kids who grew up with Nolan, are now targets of accusations so severe that law enforcement will likely need to expend resources simply protecting the living while investigating the dead. This is not justice seeking. It is vengeance hunting without a defendant. It weaponizes a family's grief and turns it into a blunt instrument against other teenagers who may have made a catastrophically bad decision to leave a friend behind, but who did not commit murder. There is a chasm between negligence and homicide, and the internet has erased it entirely. No more evidence needed. The case is closed. The comments are the verdict. And that brings us to a phrase that must be repeated. There is no evidence. There is no evidence of foul play.
I mean, that could change, but you haven't heard anything to suggest foul play?
Nobody except the Facebook detectives.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting when you look at some of the photos. I don't see a life vest or anything like that. Is that something?
Not from the coroner.
Yeah, I saw the body from about 300 feet in the air, but so I wouldn't be able to tell you like exact condition. I can tell you that it did not appear to be waterlogged. It was only in the water for a couple days, but nevertheless, the sheriff's office put out a statement saying that they had no reason to believe it was not Nolan. So I think they were pretty confident it was. I think the reason for the delay in the official announcement is that I don't.
Not from the sheriff's office, not from the Cajun Navy spotter who scanned every inch of that water from a single engine aircraft. Yet, once that phrase is ignored, the conspiracy becomes self-replicating. So here is the question that transforms this case from an isolated tragedy into a national security of the psyche. What happens to our justice system when the public no longer waits for an autopsy report before issuing execution threats? The moral refrain echoes here for the third time. There is no evidence, but the irreversible harm has already been inflicted. Before the DNA results are even returned, before the autopsy report is finalized, before the medical examiner determines whether drowning was the cause and whether any underlying condition or environmental factor contributed, the lives of Nolan's friends have been permanently altered. Their reputations have been immolated on a pyre of speculation. They are mourning a friend while looking over their shoulders.
Yeah, we're not part of the investigation. You know, we're not policemen. We're not journalists. We are strictly brought in because we're really good at finding people that are missing. And that's sort of our role. Once it was radioed up to me in the plane that there was a recovery, we did a couple of circles just looking at the TOC that they were setting up there on the beach, and then we just returned to base. And my team was already en route to I think it was the Mars Lake boat launch in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, where they had kind of the law enforcement had set up a staging area. That's where Nolan's family was. And, our guys were out there with his mother, just trying to comfort her. But as far as like, any kind of inside investigation, information about the investigation, unless that's voluntarily offered by law enforcement, which I doubt, that's not something that we're going to know. If there was anything they, wanted to interview us about or just, share any information that we had, we'd be happy to. But again, we're not police officers.
A dual trauma no one should endure. We will have answers. The autopsy scheduled by the Jackson County Coroner's Office will provide physiological data. The toxicology screen, which will take weeks, will reveal or exclude intoxication. The investigation into the timeline, the weather conditions, the rip current patterns on that specific day will reconstruct the most likely sequence of events, but no autopsy will repair what was destroyed in those 48 hours before the body was even found. The secondary infection of a tragedy. The conspiracy theory often does more damage than the initial wound. So we close with a call to research. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office has been releasing official statements as this investigation progresses. Pull the official press release from July 6th confirming the discovery and the statement that there is no reason to suspect foul play. Read it. Then ask yourself in the comments one question: at what point in that official timeline did the death threats begin, and what specific piece of public evidence was introduced to justify them? Because if the answer is nothing, then we aren't just witnessing a drowning investigation. We are witnessing a cautionary tale about a society that has forgotten that tragedy does not require a villain. Sometimes, the water just wins. If you want more evidence-based breakdowns that cut through the noise, like this video, share it, subscribe to the VerdictOrigin, and turn on notifications. We follow the facts, not the fury. See you on the next one.